Total Soccer Show presented by Netflix. This is World Cup Daily. We were treated to a classic from the Three Lions and El Tri, with Mexico scoring 2 and England 3. There were red cards, penalties and performances that drew acclaim as England played one of their finest ever World Cup knockout games. Elsewhere, they come from the land of the ice and snow, from the midnight sun where the hot springs flow. Brazil had their game that didn't go to their liking as they suffered at the hands of Erling, the striking Viking. And we'll discuss some corruption fun, namely the availability of Folarin Balogun. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, hi there, Taylor Rockwell. What's up with you, sir?
Hi, the Ryan Bailey. I just needed officially noted that I object to your introduction and your phrasing thereof, and I've appealed it. Oh, and FIFA have agreed. You're suspended, Ryan. Sorry.
Is it because of Led Zeppelin lyrics? Are we getting sued now?
Yep. That's how this works. I hope you're happy. My fire truck of lawyers are on their way to your home right now.
We had a good run.
We really did.
Joe Larry, how are you?
What's up? Probably not as good as you, Ryan, after that England performance. I mean, that was truly, we were talking just before we started, what a weekend of games this was. To have Argentina, Cape Verde, and to have then the England-Mexico game last night, that was so much fun. Truly one of the best World Cup games I've ever seen. I am thrilled for you, Ryan.
Graham Rusden's here. On yesterday's recording, he was wearing a Mexico shirt. He's no longer doing that. Hi, Graham.
No, only because I don't have a Norway shirt. I looked into ordering one, but they're all sold out in Scotland, unsurprisingly so. But yes, last night or this morning, I don't know what time is now. I think this game finished at 4:15 in the morning for me. But it was one of the best games of the World Cup, and England definitely earned their place in the quarterfinals, I think we can say.
Yes, indeed. Very, very excited to talk about that on this episode. And my condolences, Graham, for all the Mexicans in Scotland, as they seem to be millions of them over the weekend. Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way we were brought up, Ryan, you know? It's just a coincidence.
Understood. Yeah. Enjoy that iron brew in your margarita tonight. Graham, let's get to the action. Before we do, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is the best way to support us. You get bonus episodes, bonus video, and access to our Discord. It's going off in there. Check it out. Our community is a lot of fun. We thank everybody who supports us via that medium. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Now, we will get to Sunday's games, of course, but we need Taylor to start off with the situation that's unfolded with Folarin Balogun, who is available for tonight's game against Belgium after, of course, receiving a red card in the win over Bosnia. That red card, of course, automatically accompanied by a one-game suspension per Article 10.5 of FIFA's World Cup rules. I'm sure you've all been reading up on those. And as we are aware by this point, the suspension has been suspended. A suspended suspension. Interesting. Article 27 of FIFA's Code of Discipline, was cited as the reasoning. Now, the White House appears to have claimed credit for influencing the decision, with the president posting on Truth Social, "Thank you to FIFA for doing what was right and reversing a great injustice." We are hearing that US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Andrew Giuliani, the executive director of the White House Task Force for the World Cup, helped recruit lawyers and communicated with US soccer officials as they presented their case to FIFA to ask for Balogun's ban to be lifted. And we're also hearing that Trump reportedly called Infantino personally midway through last week to discuss the situation. This decision appears to be only the second known instance of FIFA lifting a World Cup red card ban. The last one was Garrincha for Brazil in 1962. Understandably,
what a player.
I know, right? Yeah, and he set the precedent. Belgium are understandably pretty outraged by this. The Royal Belgian Football Association have made a statement. UEFA made a statement on this Monday as well, saying FIFA had crossed a red line with the decision. It said it was unprecedented, incomprehensible, and unjustifiable. So, Taylor, we're in a tricky spot here because obviously the US is benefiting very much from this situation, but it is, on the face of it, corrupt. If it wasn't that the US were the host nation, I don't believe this situation would have unfolded how it was with Balogun being available. So what are we to make of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I largely agree with all of that. It does seem like whether or not he called and was like, Gianni, come on, you got to overturn this one. Like, the government is involved in some way, and I think that is meant to be, I believe, a violation of FIFA's laws, although who knows what is a violation of FIFA laws at this point. I think that there is probably a world in which there is some level of rational explanation for how this is all played out. The problem is that just hasn't been as public or public at all. Instead, we have kind of gotten the reporting we've gotten, which indicates that there is no appeals process, but U.S. Soccer wanted to appeal because VAR was incorrectly used, allegedly, and now the government is involved, and FIFA's decided to utilize this Article 27 that you talked about, Ryan, that they've really only used to get Cristiano Ronaldo into the World Cup so without being suspended for 2 games. And it all just feels really murky, hazy, and to your point, yeah, it ends up feeling corrupt. It feels like there must be something else at play. There must be some sort of wouldn't you hate if DOJ lawyers were looking around FIFA books and looking at FIFA bylaws? That'd be a shame for you, wouldn't it? I mean, we just don't know at this point, and it's allowed for rampant speculation like what I just did. And I think that's been one of the more frustrating aspects of this is normally with a story like this, you get some level of here is the truth, here is the narrative, and then here's all the surrounding detritus that you can do with as you please. But in this case, because we don't have clarity on what has happened and why, it's left to everyone else to connect the dots. And when you have the president on Truth Social saying, thank you for doing what was right, it feels like there were conversations about what he felt was right, and Infantino, at the very least, listened to them and incorporated them into the kind of way of proceeding, even if it was an independent appeals panel ultimately who made the choice. I question the independence of that panel.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million different strands to this story, which is what makes it so interesting. And it is threatening to become the biggest story of this World Cup, where it has now exposed some of the fissures between UEFA and FIFA, which already existed. It's really a spotlight on how FIFA has kind of organised and run this entire World Cup and how they've basically just made up their own rules in a lot of ways to get what they want. This isn't the first time that we've seen this process used. As Taylor mentioned, Cristiano Ronaldo, he got a red card in, I believe, Portugal's second last penultimate qualifier, which would have seen him suspended for the first 2 games of the World Cup. They used this process to suspend that suspension, and I think that's an important distinction to make. These red cards have not been overturned. Balogun's red card has not been overturned. That would make this easier to understand. If Balogun if the red card had been overturned by the disciplinary committee, I think I actually haven't had a chance to speak on the actual red card itself. I thought it was an incredibly harsh decision, and I don't like the way that VAR was used to award that red card, and so I could understand that much more. But that hasn't happened. It hasn't been overturned by the committee. The red card still stands. It's just that FIFA has now made a unilateral decision to suspend the 1-match ban a day before the game as well. Yeah. The fact that's what makes this so suspicious. That's what makes this whole story stink. Is that it does feel like there has been space for dialogue between the Trump administration and FIFA. There's no explanation from FIFA. There's been murmurings of improper VAR use is sort of the argument that US Soccer has made. To my eye, it's exactly the same VAR use that led to Gerald Kwanzaa's red cards in the England game last night against Mexico. So it's not. We've seen this multiple times at this tournament, and it's so unbelievably murky. And yeah, I just hate, as someone who, the US aren't my national team, but obviously as a team that I've spent the last number of years speaking about, I've obviously got some skin in the game with this team, and I was so looking forward to this game against Belgium. Yep. It feels like a culmination of not just this Pochettino process, this Pochettino cycle, but this entire generation of US players. It feels like the culmination of something, and I was really looking forward to fully throwing my weight behind this team and supporting the US. And I have to admit, Balogun's going to play this game. Balogun could score in this game, given his form at this World Cup. And if that happens and the US goes through, this might not be what people want to hear. I think there's going to be an asterisk against that result and that outcome, which I hate. I hate everything about this story, but we have to talk about it.
I mean, how could there not be? There absolutely has to be. And that I share that sentiment, Graham. That's the most frustrating part of all of this. Because on some level, I was talking to my brother about this, and he was asking how FIFA operates. This was earlier in the tournament, and I was no, explaining FIFA in the warts and all. And he was but the World Cup is still good? And I was yeah, it's kind of the collective agreement we all make, is that the World Cup starts, we choose not to think about FIFA and all the FIFA things it does, and we focus in on the World Cup and the tournament. And then at the end of the tournament, we can have kind of the cooling off period, and then FIFA does something FIFA related, and we're back into being annoyed with FIFA. And then they weighed in, and they've had this involvement, and they've made this decision. The U.S. government seems to be involved in at least some way, and fully creates an asterisk around this game for me. And it feels akin to, I feel like I keep using parenting analogies. I promise I love my children and they're great. But like, it's like when your parent says no and then you like whined and complained until finally they gave in. And then it's that feeling of like, oh, well, now I got what I wanted and I don't feel good about it. Like, it feels the same. Like, I don't understand the rhetoric online seems to be like, yeah, we got him back. What are you going to do about it, crybabies? And like that Belgium are now the crybabies for complaining about this, and now they're filing an appeal. And like, get over it if you're so worried about one player. And it's like, get over it. Like, they changed the rules, and they cited a rule that they created to give them this sort of leeway to do what they want. And that's why, Graham, like, to my understanding, that's why it's not overturned. That's why it's suspended, is because they wrote it as like, that's what we can do. There's no appeals process, but we can suspend it until we review or whatever. So, like, they're citing their own kind of bogus precedent that then as though that's, like, ironclad in a way that, like, well, we can't do anything about it. It's this age-old FIFA Law 27 that we all know about. We've cited so many times. Please don't look into that at all. And it, like, I wish that weren't the case, but it really has soured things. And I think also soured things in a way, like, a lot of people had this idea about what the U.S. is going to be going into it. About, I think a lot of like foreign tourists who've come here were not sure what the vibe was going to be like, what immigration was going to be like, what police presence was going to be like, and I think have been largely pleasantly surprised by the American experience and the American supporter and how, kind of how welcoming Americans have been, in spite of the government that does not seem to be welcoming at all and is not welcoming at all. And then this just kind of opens that door again to, like, it's not U.S. fans who did this. It's not the U.S. players who did this. It's not the coaching staff or the trainers or anything like it. But they're the ones who are now going to have the asterisk next to their names, even if they're all excited to have their teammate back, even if you feel the red card was overly punitive or unfair or what have you. Like, no one ever feels like a red card is fair. No one ever feels like a red card is appropriate. There's always going to be complaints about this. And I go back to, like, when Suarez bites Chiellini in the 2014 World Cup. And I remember the Uruguayan reaction being like, you all are biased against Uruguay. You all have, like, you all are reporting these things that just aren't true. And it's just this weird circling of the wagons that I remember at the time being sort of, like, very put off by and very confused by. And, like, how could you not just kind of, like, care about what's happening? And I sort of get it now just from a, like, this is too much of a bummer. This is too frustrating. So there must be something else going on. It's Belgium's fault. It's Europe's fault. It's whatever else's fault. But ultimately it's, I guess, poor officiating, but then a lot of backroom dealing.
I think what ultimately bothers me about this scenario is that we've known for many, many years that FIFA is a corrupt organization, right? But on the sporting side, there's always been integrity. And I think this tournament, with the Ronaldo decision and with this decision, that barrier has broken a little bit. I think that's what's really disappointing about this. I was watching the ITV coverage yesterday. FIFA Article 26 allows me to watch foreign broadcasts legally, by the way, just so you know. I've got that covered by my lawyer.
You should just start doing that.
Yeah. And Gary Neville was on there saying he wouldn't be surprised if US soccer didn't play Balogun in this game to sort of make a stand. I don't think there's no chance in heck that's going to happen at this point. But it goes to say that this is an international story. It's huge at the moment. It's beyond these borders that this is making ripples. Joe, can I read you a tweet that I read this morning?
Yeah, go ahead.
Red cards are not overturned by political phone calls. They are overturned by rules, evidence, and independent bodies. If a US president intervenes with the FIFA president and a player is suddenly cleared before a World Cup knockout match, the question is unavoidable. Quo vadis, FIFA? Latin. I like it. Football must never become a playground for political power. That was Sepp Blatter. Sepp Blatter, Joe, is
the worst man you know just made the correct point.
That feels so. Sepp Blatter predates me a bit, but that does feel like Sepp Blatter's like, oh, sorry, what now? There's been a controversy that I'm not attached to. Let me go dunk on this situation for some easy PR points. I don't really have a lot of time for Sepp Blatter, although the name is fantastic, and I respect him for his first name, undoubtedly. This situation is, I'm still having a hard time wrapping my mind around not what's happened and the corruption of it. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I agree with the asterisks. I agree with all these things. The reality is the U.S. probably isn't going to make a deep enough run for the asterisks to really matter. So I don't think we necessarily need to tie ourselves up in knots about that. But it is real, and I wouldn't blame people for tying themselves up in knots about it. I think, in general, this situation and the U.S. government has done more harm than good for this. And that is frustrating, to say the least. I still can't believe that this is happening. Like, this doesn't happen in soccer in the United States. This doesn't happen in a country that doesn't really, with respect to you, listener or viewer, care about, U.S. soccer. Like, this country cares about soccer in a lot of ways, and there are people in this country that care about U.S. soccer and domestic leagues and all that sort of thing. But this is the kind of thing that happens in a country that is soccer obsessed and not here. And it is unfortunate that this isn't the result of some soccer obsessed population even pushing for something. It's the result of someone who couldn't help but putting their fingers in the pot at some point throughout this tournament and couldn't wait till the final to hand out a trophy, right? I mean, yesterday was one of the most surreal days, frankly, that I've ever had, like covering this sport in the United States, or covering this sport at all. The fact that we've had 2 World Cups now that I've been covering on TSS and covering professionally, and there's been a gigantic scandal at both of these tournaments, the Berhalter and the Reina scandal in 2022, and now this story coming out of this World Cup. I honestly cannot believe it. I can't believe it. We got to scrape the 1 off the sign that said World Cup since soccer in the United States has been normal. Like, we're at 0 again. I'm in disbelief. What a surreal day it's been. And I like I said, I agree with what you guys have said.
And what's so surreal about it, Joe, is, the Reina Berhalter scandal was a scandal, and it had some cut through in a global sense, but it wasn't like the story of the World Cup, like globally, for that tournament. I feel like there's a chance this is the story for this World Cup. I think there's a chance this is the beginning of the end for Infantino. I saw Tarek Panka, who reports for the New York Times, saying similar, because I think until now, Infantino's nonsense has always benefited federations, right? It's always been, you're going to get a bigger check, and federations like money, and they're willing to accept all kinds of nonsense to get a bigger check. But this is something different, and obviously it's far from the biggest FIFA scandal, right? Iran says hello after their treatment of this World Cup, and there's all kinds of different things. But soccer has never been good at handling political issues, and obviously this is a political story in a sense, but it's got a sharp sporting focus that has clearly put a lot of noses out of joint. And I just wonder if Infantino has grossly misjudged this. I'm not saying he's going to lose the FIFA presidency on the basis of this alone, but I do wonder if this is like a moment we look back at as the moment the scale like tipped too far in one direction.
Is this where I get to say, "Oh, Graham, you sweet summer child"? Because like I wish that were true. I totally do, and I hear where you're coming from. It's just like, as always, like, what matters? Does any of this matter? Is anything going to happen? Like, I truly don't know. It seems like this was a game in which the U.S. could have been a rallying backs against the wall. We don't have our best striker. We don't have our best goal scorer. But like Pochettino and this team are going to find their way through. They're going to grit their way through. And if they got the results, it is a great story about how even if you don't have your player, you can still rally together. And then if you don't and you fall and you come up short, it's part of the story, the narrative of why that happened. And instead, now there's a different story, kind of no matter what happens. Like, unless Balogun does not play, and Pochettino, I think, came out and said, like, we're happy to have him back, there's no, like, skepticism there. There's no hesitancy there, nor has they been at other points, like when he calls out Tim Weah for talking about prices of tickets and the like. Like, I think Balogun's going to play, and that's the way this is going to go. And so it does sort of change, at least for me personally, and I think then I am labeled a crybaby online, but like it changes the narrative of this team a little bit. It feels like there was a beneficial hand, there was a beneficial decision that turns things around, and there hasn't been for other teams, and for other teams even less than that. And it ultimately, like, the only thing I can understand is that Infantino is either so tone deaf and so sort of like I don't know, like locked up in his castle where he knows no one can get him, that like there he was at the England game last night, just smiling away, chatting with people, and it's like that guy doesn't care. That guy doesn't see this giant scandal that's erupting. He's got to be front and center. And it's either like, I feel like in the best case, it's just him being like, yeah, like, you know, it probably shouldn't have been a red, and we understand everybody's mad, and like we're just going to overturn it. It's fine. But I truly think that like the way things go, this is my speculation and my whatever entirely, but like I don't know, like again I go back to, does FIFA want lawyers looking around? I feel like that's an argument that may have been made, and you look at when you have 9 of the 10 people who awarded the World Cup to Qatar being indicted in U.S. federal court, like I also wouldn't be surprised if there was like it would be a real shame if we had to start looking around, and maybe we know where some bodies are. And so then things change. Like it's just either way, it speaks to a lack of clarity, a lack of any sort of consistency when it comes to the operation of FIFA. And again, that's a thing that I would have loved to not have to think about at this World Cup, which has been so wonderful. I truly thought it was like the best World Cup until this point. And it's still been great. The games have been awesome. We'll talk about them in a minute. But it is a significant downer on what has been largely just a positive experience.
Yeah. My possibly overly generous reading on this whole thing is I don't know how much influence has come from the White House and Trump. I feel like they're maybe taking credit where maybe credit isn't due. But I think what is true is Infantino, through his entire tenure of organising this particular World Cup, the 2026 World Cup, it's been all about the product, right? Everything is about getting the best players on the field. That's why this rule was created. This is why this process was created, so that FIFA had the power to, if one of the star players gets suspended, like Cristiano Ronaldo before the tournament, here's a process, we can get them on the field again. I think Infantino is just so focused on making this the most commercially successful World Cup in history, which it already is, that having Balogun, who he knows has been the USA's best player and top scorer at this tournament, as the co-hosts of this tournament is beneficial to them. It's beneficial to Fox. Fox had the biggest viewership of any American game in history of the last game against Bosnia.
English language, yeah.
English language audience in history. And so everything is about the product, money, making it most commercially successful. And he's got complete power within FIFA, more than any other FIFA president we've seen. I mean, for his 10 years in charge or whatever, he took over the FIFA social channels for a month, and it was Infantino 10, and like he has more power than anyone before. And I think this is the clearest manifestation, or one of the clearest manifestations of that so far.
Yeah, and just to add one, I know we need to take a break and actually talk about real soccer, which I'm excited to do. Just one maybe not even a silver lining on the story, but maybe just a reminder. I do think a lot of this World Cup for the U.S. men's national team, and they've talked about this, is converting casuals into real fans, right? Like growing the footprint of this team in the United States. I will say, I think a lot of people will be right to feel what we've discussed and sort of how we feel about this decision, where there will be a bit of an asterisk on the U.S. moving forward should that happen today against Belgium. I do think a lot of fans don't care one lick about this, and I'm not really sure that they should care. It is not the fault of U.S. fan Bob Boberson that this is all happening. Great
Come
name,
on,
right? I mean,
Bob Boberson was on that call. You know he was.
Yeah, well, maybe. We're not sure. Bob Boberson
He's a
hasn't
donor.
confirmed. We don't
Bob
even know if he's
Blah
read
Blah.
Article 27, frankly. We have no idea.
Lolbug.
It's not that person's fault that this has happened, and I think I would wager that most USMNT fans don't care how this was accomplished, but appreciate that they feel injustice was done before with Balogun's decision, that he was sent off and suspended for another game, and now appreciate that they're going to have a key player back for what they feel is a correct decision for the next game. And so I don't know exactly how these things meld together, but if part of the U.S.'s mission really is to go and convert people in the United States to caring more about soccer, which is part of what this whole World Cup is all about. We've spent hours talking about that on this show. I do think there's a world in which it is helpful to have a key player back for a game that matters a lot. That it's going to be the most viewed. This one is going to be more viewed than the Bosnia game, right? This is going to be the most viewed English language soccer game in American history today. So having the pieces to go out there and not stink the place up could be helpful. And so there's a lens at which you look at this and say, yes, this is frustrating, and the world is going to care about this a lot, and there will be an asterisk that's coming from abroad, undoubtedly. But maybe from inside your own shores, there is some legitimate, tangible benefit that comes from this sort of thing. I don't really know if that's true. I'm not even 100% sure if I believe that, but I think there is something to that.
Yeah, there is benefit in having the rules bent to your will, Joe. I think you're right, definitely. All right, let's take a quick break. And of course, just to let you know, listener, the game is at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. As Joe says, it's a very, very big one. It's going to be the broadcast record. We'll be on the feed later this evening to talk about that one too. But right now, we take a quick break. When we come back, we talk about the greatest England performance of all time. Join us then.
The World Cup is finally here, Ryan, and I've been obsessed with a brand new way to experience it. FIFA World Cup Launch Edition on Netflix.
Wait, Taylor, on Netflix, like between episodes of my favorite bacon shows?
Exactly. It's completely reimagined for mobile to TV play, and honestly, it's fast, incredibly fluid, and just pure tactical fun.
Wait, walk me through the mechanics here. How does it actually work?
It is brilliant. Your TV is the stadium, and your phone becomes the controller. You just scan the QR code on your screen, and you're instantly swiping to pass and shoot.
So, a low barrier to entry, but high replay value. Can you play as any country?
All 48 teams, Ryan, in all 16 real-world stadiums, and best of all, it's included in your Netflix membership with 0 extra costs. Check the Games tab on your TV and start playing now.
FIFA World Cup Launch Edition now, only on Netflix.
Total Soccer Show, welcome back to World Cup Daily. All right, let's get to the Azteca, shall we? Where England got a 3-2 win over Mexico. 10-man England getting the job done 7,000 feet above sea level in the most partisan environment possible. We had a penalty each way. We had the red card. Sir Keir Starmer's writing his letter as we speak. Absolute chaos game here. A thriller for the neutral. This one is, I think, indisputably for me, the best England performance I've ever seen. Not necessarily for the flow of the game or anything. It was the way this team handled adversity, the way the game was managed, particularly in the second half. It simply wouldn't have happened like that in years gone by.
Brian, what would it have looked like in years gone by?
Capitulation.
It
Wouldn't
would
have
have just
held
been
strong.
like after the red, you think? Like it would have just been, there's too much pressure, we fold?
Heads would have been lost. Game wouldn't have been managed in quite a successful a way. Like, to be fair, the strategy seemed to be for 35 minutes, let's just head it away from the box and clear it into the other
On you
half
come,
and let
Dan
them go
Burn.
again. Yeah.
We weren't high enough at altitude. Let's bring a guy on who's going to increase that altitude even further.
Yeah, exactly that. But like Jude Bellingham had this quote: with 10 men defending how we defended our box, clinical like we were in their box, big pressure moments that maybe in years gone by, especially me watching as a fan as a little kid, probably England would have crumbled. This team stuck together until that last second. That is what this team is all about. And for me, Jude, who is our Lord and Saviour, as I've maintained, and I demand a knighthood straight away, he has summarised it succinctly there. This is beating a Mexico side who'd won 4 out of 4, who hadn't conceded, who were playing at the Azteca, an absolute fortress for them. This is, the environment was extremely hostile. The Mexican fans trying to keep the England team up all night in their hotel, all the kind of antics you might expect there. I think this game goes down as the stuff of legend for England. It's going to be talked about for decades. And Jude Bellingham, not just the goals, the crucial tackle to prevent that equaliser early on, the spirit that he and the rest of the team shows. I'm getting slightly emotional talking about this. It was an exhausting experience as an England fan watching this game. But I just thought it was absolutely fantastic and heroic through and through. I was so proud.
Yeah.
Really was.
I mean, it was just an incredible game, right? The sort of game that as you're watching it, you're aware this is going to be talked about for years and years to come as a classic World Cup game. And certainly as a classic England game, because I cannot emphasise enough how much this game had been built up in the British media. The altitude, the fans, the Azteca, the co-host Mexico. And the thing is, none of it was overblown, right? Because England faced all of it in this match. At Mexico and the Azteca, they threw everything they had at England, and they came out the other side. It was an absolute battle of a match, and until now I have been unsure of England's World Cup credentials, and I still don't know how to stack them up against the Frances and the Spains of this tournament, but I think their credentials are very much strengthened having come through it. I agree with everything that you said, Ryan. It's up there as one of the most, certainly the gutsiest. I don't really know how to assess the sort of like the overall standard of the performance, because I thought Mexico played a good game here, and on another day they get something out of it, or not get
Graham,
something.
did you like it when
make
they?
through.
Did you like it when they crossed the ball, or did you like it when they crossed the ball? Did you like it when they dribbled down and then crossed the ball? Or did
So
you like
much
it when
quality.
They, regained possession
They
and
showed so
crossed
much
the ball?
quality.
So many crosses. David Moyes was proud watching this game. But yes, I think coming out of this game, their credentials are clearly strengthened.
Yeah, I would say that I would agree with everything that's been said, and I would add, like, an enduring figure of this game for me. Like, yes, there's Bellingham, yes, there's Kane, there's so many key players, but Jordan Pickford was incredible in this game. Incredible in so many different ways, including being like, I've studied your tape, CONCACAF. I know your ways. Allow me to just instigate and annoy at every possible opportunity, including throwing myself out of bounds, chasing an errant shot, and then pretending like I've been hurt out of bounds so that I bleed an extra, at most, 8 seconds off the clock. But he kept doing it, and I feel like it was really annoying the Azteca crowd and the Mexican team themselves. But then also, he's just makes so many good saves. He doesn't get overly complicated. He doesn't start feeling it and like try to catch a cross that he has no business catching. It is punches. It is pushes away. It is just steady. And in a game like that, we've talked about it before, like, you have to have your reliable players that you need to be reliable be just that. And Pickford, like, stood on his head in certain ways, and then also was just so steady and such a rallying point, but also such like an emotional leader, and then I think also an instigator. It was a perfect Jordan Pickford game, and I think he also deserves to be on that like inevitable statue after that win at the Azteca.
that save from Raul Jimenez in the first 50 minutes
ridiculous.
is one of the saves of the tournament. Because as soon as that comes off Jimenez's head, I'm thinking goal. That's in the back of the net. And that was his best save of the game. But there was another one. Was it also from Jimenez at the start of the second half?
At one point, it was just a competition between those two. Yeah,
it's one of his best ever England performances. He's a big game player, Pickford. Like, I had concerns. I think I was the only one. I don't think I was the only one who a few years ago had slight doubts about Jordan Pickford's level. For England, I don't have any of those doubts left. Like, he's one of their most important players.
Yeah, best Pickford performance I've ever seen. I mean, Jude Bellingham's performance speaks for itself. Harry Kane to bury that penalty under the pressure and the circumstance as well. We've seen that not go his way at World Cups before, that kind of situation.
Gentlemanly also to give one away, just to even out the cosmic balance there. I thought that was nice.
Well, quite soft, I would argue. That
kicking the guy's leg inside the box.
Yeah.
No.
Also, it was an American, so it's been upgraded to a red card.
That's right. Correct. And England have now lost this game. No, I mean, this game was delightful. I thought Harry Kane was brilliant across the board. The ball that he plays, what is that for the Bellingham second goal? Or is it? Yeah, it is the second goal.
It's the second one, yeah.
How does he even see that pass? I mean, it is just ridiculous, that the vision on that sequence. And that England, the thing that impressed me about them, I think I agree with Graham. You said something about gutting, like their grittiest or gutsiest performance. I mean, I don't think England played especially well in this game, to be honest. I really don't. I think that they allowed the margins to be quite thin. It was very Southgate-y from England, this whole performance. From the very start, it was England letting Mexico have the ball and England sitting quite deep and then ending up really, really deep before the half. And it was a bit of a head-scratcher as to how Mexico hadn't totally equalized and made it 2-2 before the break. England had sat so deep for so long, but they got the job done. And then in the second half, I thought the way they closed out the game, that was genuinely impressive. Where the way that they dealt with aerial service, every single ball that came in, it just looked like was neutralized almost immediately. Mexico had one or two moments. There's the Stones clearance that is a bit dicey. Before that beautiful man takes care of business. There's a few of those. But really, the ability that England showed to defend their box down a man to gut out that win, I thought was quite impressive. I really was surprised at how Tuchel approached this game. I was floored, frankly. I could understand more about why Brazil approached their game against Norway in almost the exact same way. But the way that this all played out was not what I would have expected from a Thomas Tuchel team. But I suppose it worked, and England actually, unlike Brazil, which we'll get onto, made Mexico pay for their turnovers that they then quickly attacked afterwards. So I suppose there was merit there. And when you have the central defenders that this team has to go and see out a result like they did, I think there's a lot to like there.
I just can't believe that for the final 25 minutes of this match, as it turned out to be, with 50 minutes of regulation time left and then 10 minutes of stoppage time, that Tuchel essentially set up England to shut up shop. Right, let's protect this, lads. Let's get Dan Burn on and head everything away. And Mexico played into England's hands because I thought Aguirre got it wrong by taking off Quinones, Mora and Gutierrez, which I know was designed to just get like cross after cross into the England box. But it robbed them of a little bit of guile. Like, those players were their creators, and they actually didn't really... The period of time where Mexico really had England against the wall was the end of the first half.
Agreed,
where I have no idea how they didn't get an equalising goal then, and that was save after save and block after block. For the final 25 minutes, like, Mexico didn't really create a whole lot in that period. So I guess in a sense it was comfortable for England. I don't know if that's a good idea to replicate in other matches at this World Cup against stronger opponents, basically just to not have any out ball and defend your own box. But for the circumstance and for the situation England found themselves in here, it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I put it in the same category, not in the same way, but the same category as the France-Paraguay game, in which, like, I didn't know you had that ability. I didn't know that if it was going to become a knife fight, France would pull out some knives and get after it. Like, in this game, at the red card moment, when Quanta gets that red card, and you think about, like, the position that's getting the red card, why there aren't other options ahead of him, and the fullback issue and the squad selection with Tuchel, if you pause it there, I agree with Ryan. Like, historically, I thought in the moment, like, they're going to lose this game, and the narrative is going to be Thomas Tuchel. This is what happens when you choose the roster you chose, and then England capitulate, and they kind of don't have it within themselves to get this result and to see things out. Like, I thought for all the world, that's how this is going to go. Mexico are going to fight and get that equalizer. And then they almost do, but they don't. And that's after England score a goal while shorthanded. And I think there is a world in which this goes exactly as disastrously as we thought it could under Thomas Tuchel. And I'm excited to live in a world where instead England got their way through, defend with like everything they have a great goalkeeping performance, have great attacking performances when they need them, and ultimately find their way to grit it to a result. Like, that's what you've got to do in a tournament like this, and well done to them.
I think. Sorry, Ryan. I was just going to add. I think that if there's an encouragement for England, one certainly is that they saw this result with as much skill and ease as they did. I think that is a huge positive for this team. Another positive, when England did decide to attack, which was infrequently, although I suppose there's also some, in the grand scheme of the game, early goals that allowed them to sit with a little bit more comfort defensively in their own half for much of the game. It just looked so easy. Like the advantage that Anthony Gordon had on that left side, he was creating so much space with what looked like so little effort. And I think Bellingham's box crashing runs fit into that category. The physical advantage that England had on both sides of the ball, defensively to deny the crossers. Gallardo had a ton of efforts to cross on that left side. He just never created any real separation. Didn't have a chance to go out and actually drive 1v1. England's physical advantage shone through in that area. I thought it shone through in the attack as well. To have Bellingham, who was just an elite player physically, going and roaming and doing what he did in this game. To have all the way Elliot Anderson blows up, it's the youngest player at the World Cup in Gilmora, but the way that he just blows that play up and sparks something for England. They have so much physicality as a team, and when they can marry that properly with either defensive stability or some real attacking joy as well, I think that's the recipe for this team to go out there and win this whole thing. And I think you could see kernels of that potential in this performance, even though it was ugly, and the performance really was like less of a story than the game and the sheer absurdity of it and all those things. Yeah. But I think there are legitimate, wow, we could do something here kind of vibes from England after this performance.
Yeah. I think whatever happens against Norway in Miami on Saturday, this England campaign's going to go down and be remembered for a long time. Even just for the roller coaster these last two games have provided England fans. Obviously, going a comeback win against DR Congo, and then this, where as an England fan, I don't think I've ever been as stressed, and I felt the nervous energy for hours after this one because of that. You don't expect Thomas Tuchel to have a team that, as we've covered, hoofing outside of the box for over half an hour. At least play it to someone's feet to try and get it to the corner. Come on.
Dan Burn headed from his own 6-yard box. I've seen this on social media this morning. Dan Burn headed from his own 6-yard box into the opposition half. I've never seen that done before. That was the biggest individual achievement from this game.
Dan Burn might take over the Kyle Walker Cole Palmer Award for, huh? Because every time they cut to Dan Burn, he looked like he was maybe saying his name to himself on repeat.
The air is much thinner up there where he lives, to be fair.
even thinner. It's another Empire State Building on top of the Azteca before you get to Dan Burn. But I think even within the defensiveness and the just kind of shutting up shop approach of Thomas Tuchel as the game went on, there are still, I think, moments worth noting that England crowd of the middle. They're in like a 5-3-1 to see out the game, but they've got plenty of numbers central, but they're still engaging in kind of like a man-oriented way where they're not letting anybody have a ton of time and space. They're closing down. They're not like rapid-fire pressing because who has the legs for that in the 75th or 81st or whatever minute. But then when it would go wide, specifically D'Alvarado, that's where they would send two. They always sent two out there. On the other side, they did not. And it seemed like maybe they were inviting crosses from the one side and not the other. And so I felt like they still had a really good awareness of where the threats might be and how to like extra neutralize certain threats to keep Mexico playing the way that benefited England. And they did. And Aguirre, I think, does get his changes wrong. I think that they ended up kind of playing into England's hands. But all of that is good, proactive changes that could have gone horrifically, because if Mexico did equalize, it is that sort of age-old story of like, and now how do you get back into it with 8 defenders on the pitch? But that isn't what they had to do because they saw the result out. And again, that is just such a sizable thing to have happen. Onwards to Norway. That's going to be a fun one.
It will be indeed. England finishing the game with 33.2% possession, their lowest since the records began in 1966. But once again, in and out of possession, I thought this was a perfectly executed game from England. And even in possession, just using the channels in a different way each game. Like, it was all through the left for Anthony Gordon going forward.
Gordon had a great game.
He had a terrific game. This is by far his best game of this tournament as well. Whereas like the previous game, everything was through the right channel. It's just showing just different weapons across the field. It's fantastic.
Gordon...
You know who didn't think that? Javier Aguirre. Did you see that little clip?
Yes.
Oh, that was good.
Hey, Gordon. F you.
And they both laughed.
And then he goes, ha, 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 ha. He's the Joker.
He's brilliant. That was a great moment. I did enjoy that. Very good. There was a couple of really good off the field incidents in this game. Harry Kane's post-match interview where he can't speak and he sounds like he's on Sesame Street is just vintage. That's terrific. And Jordan Henderson, who got booked.
Poor Hendo.
He got booked during the game while being warming up as a substitute, and then post-game falls over the advertising hoardings and appears to break his arm and needed oxygen and to be stretched off the field. So, bit of a journey for Jordan Henderson at this tournament. What a fighter for a player who hasn't.
Another piece of luck for England. Henderson's out of the tournament. That's cruel. I did feel very sorry for him because it's not even in the celebrations. He's sort of leaping over the advertising hoarding to go back to the dressing room, and he just botches it and lands on his arm. And yeah, I'd be surprised if his World Cup is not over. It looked like a bad one.
It did indeed. But a very, very good one for England this game, of course, and quarterfinal against Norway, as noted. On Saturday, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about Norway's win over Brazil. So much to talk about in this episode. Join us then. Total Soccer Show presented by Netflix. Welcome back to World Cup Daily. We had... Are we calling it an upset? I suppose it is. Norway 2.
Not when I predicted it on yesterday's show. Huh?
Well, there we go.
That one came in.
A predictable upset. Norway's first ever World Cup quarterfinal in the books. The most important win in their soccer history as well. For the first time since 1990, Brazil have failed to get to the quarterfinals. An eventful game, this one, as well, Graham. They had quite a lot going on here. We had a lot of misses and missed opportunities and a missed penalty from Brazil as well. So it could have been a different story had the chips fallen in a different way. Of course, Patrick Berg getting on the ball in there early on as well for a disallowed goal for offside too. But yeah, this story is about Erling Haaland, his terrific brace, and the Norwegians getting it done against a powerhouse.
Yeah, and this is a statement result for Norway where there's been a whole lot of debate just amongst ourselves, never mind anyone else, about how good Norway actually are. We have an answer now. They're a serious threat at this World Cup. They're into the quarterfinals. Would anyone really be surprised if they beat England to make the semi-finals? I know I wouldn't. But in terms of the game itself, kind of difficult to pick apart because Brazil had opportunities. Big ones. They had the Guimarães penalty, then there was the Endrick 1-on-1 opportunity in the second half. Brazil had 5 big chances in this match, and Nyland, the Norwegian goalkeeper, had the game of his life. And actually, in a macro sense, I felt like Brazil's game plan kind of worked. They were able to sucker Norway into letting them play in the break. Norway had a lot of the ball. That kind of suited Brazil. It was a favourable game state for them. And I have to imagine, in a lot of ways, this game went exactly as Ancelotti drew it up. But they didn't take those opportunities when they came. And when Norway's chances came, They had Erling Haaland, the goalbot, to take them. So that may be reductive. Maybe there's some disagreement on the flow of this game and how good or bad Brazil were. But that was kind of the gist of the game as I saw it.
Yeah, definitely. Taylor, well-deserved victory for Norway in the end, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that they set up to handle what they expected Brazil to throw at them, and then largely did. With the caveat that, like, this obviously, if that penalty is converted, we're maybe having a different conversation, but it wasn't. And instead, I think Norway handled the physicality as they needed to, were confident and comfortable largely on the ball and didn't present any opportunities in that way, but then also, I think, pragmatic in not trying to muck around too much when it did feel like when Brazil were pressing and trying to cause problems. It felt like a good, adjustable game plan that then has Erling Haaland at the tip of it. And that is ultimately going to be such a massive difference maker where he is like a fox in the box, like poacher in some ways, like can be in terms of like making that run.
Gorilla in the box, I think.
It's a giant goal bot in the box. The way he can like read situations as they're developing and then make really smart plays and lose his defender and kind of ghost past defenders. Like a person of his size being able to somehow get open and then stay open is staggering in its own right. But then, like, that finish for the second goal, it's just a touch and a bang, and it's like, it's one of those sort of like, oh, I should just do that every time sort of goals. Like, he made that look so easily, and it's such an insanely difficult shot for him to have pulled off. And then the whole game, just the smirk, he's constantly smirking and constantly like, that was fun. It's the same thing he did with Manchester City this season. There is just a whole vibe going on with Erling Haaland right now of like supreme confidence, but backed up by form and performance, and then backed up by a team that are also performing quite well. It's a fun time to be a Norway fan, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, Haaland's performance was the best performance of the day yesterday. Like the way that he ices the game with that strike from outside the box. I mean, it's ridiculous. It is. He could have hit a post and just stand by that bottom corner. it was marked reasonably well by Brazil. Like, I mean, it is such a low percentage chance. And to me, it felt like Brazil were the better team in this game, but Norway had Erling Haaland, and Brazil did not. I mean, Brazil's strategy, I thought, was absolutely fascinating, where they just straight up let Norway dominate the ball. Even from the very early bits of this game, that was the intention, tactically, from Carlo Ancelotti, as we could observe on the field anyway. And you can sort of understand why that happens, because you don't want Erling Haaland to have a chance to blitz you in transition, so you just take away those transition moments. And Brazil did that, I thought, pretty well in this game. They did not allow many chances at all in the first half or in the second half. And they did, Brazil themselves, create some looks in transition for the chances that have already been discussed. Both the penalty and the Endrick miss come from Brazil's attacking transition play that they were clearly trying to maximize while eliminating that bit of the game for Norway. They just didn't finish their chances. And sometimes soccer is a weird game where I think the better team on the day doesn't win. And that can be that sort of thing can happen when one team has a giant goal-scoring robot who needs to touch the ball 2 times to score 2 goals, and you do not. And that was the reality for Brazil here.
I think the resounding image of this game for me was the Neymar late consolation penalty.
What is happening?
Little Scrappy Doo getting his goal and then going up to the Norway goalkeeper who's laughing in his face as he walks away.
As Neymar's like, I'm here.
Yeah.
This is me. Show
like,
respect.
Get back
It's
to
like,
the center circle. Like, there's still time for an equalizer here.
Unreal.
But
I just couldn't get over like how much that was like just lost in the moment, self-aggrandizing, as it's like I'm still here for the next 12 seconds. Then I'm not here anymore because we've been eliminated. But right now I'm talking trash. Like, I don't know. I guess if you scored a goal and you're annoyed with the goalkeeper, have at it. But
surely
it was bad optics in my
and
opinion.
then he's in floods of tears after. It's like.
Surely-
all from a player who's like a Make-A-Wish inclusion in this squad. Like João Pedro's at home, like watching this tournament. Yeah, I thought it was ridiculous.
I mean, clearly it was a Neymar reminding him that, hey, I'm one of the greatest players of all time, and you're not. I will say I thought Nealon was fantastic in this game. Like, he was utterly crucial in this match. And so it maybe was not the best moment to be doing that. Not only are you on the way out and Norway or not, but also the player that you're trash talking has just had an incredible game that is seeing your team out. A little bit of a rough moment from Brazil, who I don't think handled this capitulation all that well.
Yeah, and just while we're quickly sort of highlighting other Norwegian players who contributed here, because Haaland is clearly like the main man. They don't make it this far in the tournament without him. But I think I've sort of underestimated or underrated how much additional quality Norway have got in their squad beyond Odegaard and Haaland. So even like players like Schelderup, who I thought was excellent off the bench with the service he provided, Haaland, he's done that in 2 or 3 games at this tournament. He just gives Norway a little bit of sort of extra guile and creativity, especially when compared to like Alexander Sorloth, who's been starting games on the right wing. Oscar Bob is as well off the bench as, a useful option with his dribbling. So we all knew that Haaland and Odegaard would be threats, but Norway, they have more than just those 2 players. Like Berg, the Bodo Glimt central midfielder, I think has been excellent throughout this tournament as well. I know Christopher Ayer gives away the penalty and then almost scores a freak own goal that Nealand bails him out of in this game. So a bit of an up and down game for Christopher Ayer, but I think broadly speaking, he's had a good World Cup as well. So yeah, Norway semi-finals is possible for them. Maybe even a final. I don't know. I think anything's on the table for this Norway team.
Nah.
Good
Well said,
counterpoint.
Ryan. Well said. I agree.
Yeah, very, very good stuff from Norway, of course. Any more to say on this? I think there's going to be a big Brazil post-mortem after this one, right? It's
not like them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's odd, though, because I don't necessarily feel like there was a lot that went wrong for Brazil in this game or at this tournament. They were cruising through the group stage by and large. Into the Morocco opener was not exactly what they would have liked, but really they managed the group stage like all the other big contenders did, and they made it through. And they played a really good Japan team and a really good Norway team. And sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. I don't know. I don't feel like, not that there won't be, Ryan, because I agree with you. I don't think this was a case of, wow, everything went wrong for Brazil and now they have to tear everything down to the studs. I really don't believe that in any way. I just think that, unfortunately, they ran up against a team that's hot at the right time, and that was hot specifically in the right moments in this game, and that sees them bounce, even if Brazil maybe weren't a top-tier contender anyway.
I don't think it's a tear it all down sort of situation. Obviously, I'm not Brazilian. I'm guessing the Brazilian media will disagree. But I do think like this was a game in which the relatively threadbare nature of this squad was on display for me, where you don't have like João Pedro, as Graham talked about. There's the Rafinha injury that keeps him out. But like the subs that they bring on, I'm not breaking any new ground here, but like it is not the Brazil of old. It's not France where it's like, wow, they're bringing on those 3 guys. Like, wow, that's fair. Like we have no chance of dealing with that. Like Neymar, like maybe there's a moment of like, oh, what a great narrative it would be, but he doesn't have that speed, that acceleration, that little like quickness that you need that he used to have. Like Endrick, I still like is very young and could still become a world-class player, but I think you can see kind of the rawness in his game. Like Martinelli, Graham's been kind of skeptical of him for quite some time for different reasons. Like it didn't feel like a vintage Brazil team, and I think that it hasn't felt like a vintage Brazil team for a very long time. Will probably require some level of introspection and maybe some new approaches, because I do think that the idea was, well, we've had the talent, we've had the players, and it hasn't come together. If we have the manager and add that in there, maybe that's the difference that could be made. And I do think it made the difference in games in this competition, specifically against Japan. And it might well be that it's just Norway with a machine with the Iron Giant in front of them with an ever-present ponytail that never gets knocked out of place. All the more reason to suspect he's a robot. But I still think there are probably reasons for Brazil to spend some time looking at the squad, the way they've gone about building this team, the way they've gone about approaching the World Cup.
Yeah, I think the squad build was weird from Ancelotti. I've already kind of said that even before the start of the tournament. The fact that João Pedro was overlooked for Neymar, I thought was laughable, frankly. But Taylor, you mentioned in passing the injuries. I think it's worth just outlining some of the injured players that were missing from this Brazil squad. So Eder Militao defensively. And then in the attack, you mentioned like Brazil didn't have the same options that France had off the bench or to rotate from game to game. And that's true of this World Cup. That would have been different if they'd had Rafinha, Rodrigo and Estevao, all of whom were out injured for this competition. So I think it was a combination of poor squad build, kind of questionable midfield in particular, and I was just never convinced by their midfield with Casemiro in there running through Trico, and then some of the injuries that they had contributed to this exit.
There we go. Well, we have set up a quarter-final in Miami on Saturday, England versus Norway. The Nordics and the Brits are going to cope super well with that climate, I'm quite sure, on Saturday. Very much looking forward to it. Very much looking forward also to the games that are happening today as we record. Portugal versus Spain, followed by the US taking on Belgium. Very much looking forward to those games. By the way, while we've been recording, the president has confirmed that he spoke with Gianni Infantino about reviewing that red card situation. So there we go. Wonderful stuff.
Great
Amazing.
stuff.
Amazing.
Tremendous.
Time to be alive. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for your contributions here. Looking forward to chatting with you about the US's win over Belgium later.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Ryan Bailey.
All right, Joe Lowry, thank you very much indeed for your services to this here podcast.
Thanks, Ryan. It's maybe coming home. Maybe it is.
Might be. I've got a good feeling. Graham Ruthven, thank you very much, sir.
If it is coming home, Ryan Bailey, I won't be on this podcast for much longer. Thank you.
Well, it was good having a professional working relationship with you up to this point, Graham. Thank you very much indeed, listener, for joining us in this one. We'll be back very shortly indeed, but for now, bye.